Vega from the Center for Mindful Eating, talking again, interviewing one of our great board members in this frame of the second International Mindful Eating Day. And I have the privilege today to be interviewing Sandra Aamodt, who is also a board member and who has given so much to us in the field and in the science of eating, of mindful eating. Sandra is a neuroscientist and science writer, most recently the author of Why Diets Make Us Fat, the Unintended Consequences of Our Obsession with Weight Loss. And she also had this wonderful TED Talk that, if in case you haven't heard, I really invite you to go and see and listen to her. This TED Talk from 2013, which had over 3.5 million views. And she has also published opinion pieces in the New York Times and elsewhere. And well, I'm delighted to talk to her because she's also received her undergraduate degree in biophysics from Johns Hopkins University and her PhD in neuroscience from the University of Rochester. And she has had all these wonderful awards and a postdoctoral research, and above all, she's a human being that shares her passion and her experience through her work, not only as a writer, but as a person that talks and gives conferences. And I feel very, very privileged to be here presenting Sandra to you and to talk about the respectful care in the present moment as a way to nourish our mindful eating practice. So thank you so much, Sandra, for being here.
Oh, thank you so much for having me.
Sandra, you know, I am a fan of your TED Talk, as I have told you before. And when we are talking about mindful eating, when I am thinking about mindful eating, well, it comes to my mind that it is about being fully aware with all our senses and to be present with our experience when we think of food, when we select food, when we prepare and eat food. And that it also requires that we become in contact with our satiety and hunger cues and respect our own body's wisdom. But you know, for some people, for some of us, including myself at the time, the simple thought about eating can be tinted with fear or anxiety over losing control or over gaining weight, and the anxiety about eating in a very particular way. So I want to ask you, from all the experience that you have and you have shared in your writing and your talks, what do you understand for respectful care in the present moment, and how that can help us nourish our mindful eating practice?
I think that the reason that eating brings up so much anxiety for some of us is precisely because when we try to take care of ourselves, we're not doing a good job of staying in the present moment. We're not thinking about, oh, I have this lovely ripe peach in front of me. We're thinking, oh, but what if I start eating and I can't stop? What if I gain weight? What if? And all of those thoughts they're understandable, they're products of our experience and our culture, and there's nothing wrong with having those thoughts. But a large part of taking good care of ourselves is to come to understand that in the end, they're just thoughts. They're not actual real things that are going to happen or that are likely to happen. We don't know any of the things that we fear. And the more we can just stay with what is really happening to us in the moment, the better job we do with giving ourselves what we really need right then. So that was a huge lesson for me to learn personally. that all of my efforts to anticipate problems and solve problems and take care of myself. I mean, what you're trying to do when you do that kind of worrying is to take care of yourself. But what you really are accomplishing in many cases is to make it that much harder to get what you need in the moment. So I think if you're someone who hasn't tried to take care of yourself in that way, and you have habits of taking care of yourself in a way that involves a lot of worrying and anticipation of the future, it can be an enormously freeing experience to just sit back and say, okay, this is what's here right in front of me. Let's just do that.
So in other words, sometimes when we cognitively understand the concept of mindful eating, about, oh, I have to be in the present and I have to enjoy and all that, I might understand, but when I actually am in front of the food or in the experience of eating, if I'm not aware, if I'm not fully present, I may very easily jump into the future or into the past and then forget the whole purpose, right? Like I get caught up in the thinking and miss the whole opportunity that is in front of us. Is that what you're? Yeah. Thank you. Because as human beings, we can very easily get caught up by our thinking and think that is the truth, right? Like forget the perspective. And in that sense, and also talking about how to nourish our mindful eating practice, in the TED talk that I was mentioning at the beginning, you talk a lot about the physiology. Would that be the right way to say, like the neurophysiology or the organic part that is happening and why diets don't work? And I personally think that a lot of us go for a diet because we are unhappy with our bodies, as you mentioned before, like we're socially driven. No? What is the rule? How is the ideal weight and all that? And we tend to feel unhappy, and we are looking continuously for this slim body. But unfortunately, as you very well say, when we do not get the results, we fail, that it's failure that we're facing. And my second question would be, for many of us, that has been what we know, what we have lived by for so many years. So how could mindful eating, like truly help somebody who's always believed that happiness is on the number of the scale or on the size of the jeans? How can mindful eating offer this opportunity to start respecting who we are, ourselves as we are, and therefore from that place to start taking better care of ourselves? How can we do it through mindful eating?
That has been the most amazing part of my own journey with mindful eating. I expected, looking at the research, that when I started eating mindfully that I would be able to form a better relationship with food and start enjoying it more and getting a better sense of what I really needed from it. But the relationship and the way it's changed my relationship with my body has really been incredible. I don't think any of us realize when we're in the middle of these kinds of concerns about weight and body image how difficult we're making it for ourselves. I mean, how can you actually treat your body with respect and care while acting out the fact that you think it's unacceptable, right? We try to change our bodies and love them at the same time. And there's a very basic contradiction there. If you love your body, why are you trying to change it? But it turns out that that works in reverse too. And that's the part that was unexpectedly powerful for me, is that when I did stop trying to change my body, it just gradually and without any particular effort on my part, it became easier and easier to value it, to respect it, and to take care of it. So I found that I spend, this is now 7 years down the line from when I stopped dieting, and the changes have been enormous and very gradual. But I went from being somebody who had negative thoughts every time I looked in the mirror for pretty much my whole life to thinking, really, it's not bad at all. It's pretty nice, actually. I really kind of like my body. And that transition has allowed me then to be much braver in how I live my life. It allowed me to go on stage and give that very scary TED Talk.
Wonderful.
It allowed me to take up dancing for the first time. A physical thing that you do with your body where the entire point of the experience is for people to look at you.
Wow.
That's something I never would have considered back in the days when I was sure that there was something the matter with my body. And so, I used to go to the gym and get on the stationary bike and pound out an hour of exercise that was sort of, half exercise and half punishment for having eaten anything. And now I go to the club and I dance, and I actually get more exercise. And it's enormously fun. It's good for my mental health instead of being harmful to it. And that whole shift in my attitude toward my physical self and the way that I take care of myself really grew from the seed of saying, okay, I give up. This is the body I have, and this is the body I'm going to have. I don't get an opportunity to live some other life in some other body, so I'm just going to do it.
So that to me makes me unavoidably think of the word acceptance, right? Like when we finally accept ourselves is when we actually can start to change, right? Because we become happy with who we are, and we start doing whatever it is that we do, like eating more mindfully in this case, not out of fear or out of the desire of changing us, but out of the desire to be with ourselves and respect ourselves for who we are, right? So that was very powerful. I resonated so much. I can imagine that a lot of people that are listening to this interview can resonate as well. And also the part that you say how you enjoy dancing, like giving yourself the permission to be happy. And I love dancing too. So this is very, very, very lovely that you shared this experience with us. And I want to say something that also, well, for me is important working with children and teenagers. In your talk, you mentioned that, and it's also been published elsewhere, that dieting is a risk factor for eating disorders. And as you said in your talk, a lot of our daughters or teenagers or girls have learned to measure their worth or their value with the wrong scale, if I'm trying to quote what you said. And yes, that is true. And I would like to ask you, what would you tell these girls? Because if I remember my time when I was a teenager, at that time, whatever any grown up or any adult would say would just not sit well with me. While we're teenagers, we tend to imitate, we're finding our own personality, and we do what the rest do. So how could we approach this or approach this topic with the teenagers to invite them to accept themselves, to start respecting their bodies, and then therefore uh, change their relationship with food, with eating, with themselves. What would be your suggestion for us professionals or mothers?
So one of the things that I tell all my friends with teenagers when they're frustrated with how their teenagers won't listen to them and how difficult that stage of life can be, I say, your daughter is practicing being an independent human being and living by her own values. And even if you're a little frustrated with what those values are right this minute, the bigger project of your daughter learning to know what she wants and insist on getting it is a hugely important tool that you can send her out into the world with. It's worth all the fights and all the hassles that you're going through right now. You know, I tell the fathers, your daughter is practicing saying no to men. That's a skill you want her to have, right? You want your daughter to go out into the world and be herself. And I would really say the same thing to a teenager about the mindful eating, that the most important tool that you can go out into the world with is to really deeply understand what you want, what is good for you, what makes you happy in the moment, and what is going to make you happy tomorrow and next week, because there is absolutely no way that you can get what you want in the world if you don't know what you want. And mindfulness is a really excellent tool for helping you discover outside of your preconceptions and what your friends do and what your culture does, what actually works for you in your heart. And I think everything that we want for our daughters grows from that.
Oh, wow. You make it sound so easy. Like, honestly,
I don't have any kids, you can probably tell.
No, but really, like, because I'm facing that stage. I have preteens, and it's a stage that, well, being in this field, I wouldn't want them to not love themselves, you know. Yet I know that I'm entering a phase in which they probably will be listening outside more than inside, or more than in the house or whatever. But yeah, like remembering what, as you said, what we want, how difficult that might be sometimes, and sticking loyal to ourselves, I guess, and being present. No, this is the part where mindfulness can help us remind ourselves and define what we want. And the part that I also love is when you share, for us grown-ups, we tend to forget the teenage time of our own experience, and we see it as a very difficult stage. But as you very well said, is the stage in which they are practicing what they're going to be, and we need to provide the environment for them to nourish and be have a good self-esteem, right?
And they are paying more attention to you than you think. So you can model for them how to be in a difficult situation in a mindful way.
Yeah.
They don't want to look like they're watching, but they're watching.
Yeah, and also in that particular statement you're making, how we as mothers also model the love for ourselves, right? Absolutely. We're constantly on the scale, auto-criticizing us, like saying how fat I am or how bad I was because I ate that and that. Well, what
your
are
kids
we
are listening?
Yeah, yeah. Well, I feel like I want more. I'm being added. I want more, but I want to thank you so much for sharing from your very human way of talking and from your own experience. Thank you so much for what you do, you provide us through your work. Thank you. Thank you for your presence and for being here.
Thank you so much. This was fun.
Thank you. See you soon.
Okay, bye-bye.
Bye-bye.